Hey there, friends. I'm glad you're here. Tonight, I've got a story you're going to love. But before we settle in, go ahead and hit that like button and subscribe so you don't miss any of these cozy tales. And hey, drop a comment letting me know where you're tuning in from and what time it is where you are. It's always amazing to see our little storytelling circle stretch across the globe. Now dim those lights, get comfy, and let's drift into tonight's journey together. The dawn of yoga, before 3000 BCE, before cities rose and kings ruled their kingdoms, before temples were built or scriptures were written down, there was the land of ancient India, raw, vast, and deeply in tune with nature's rhythms. This was a time long before clocks ticked or calendars marked the passing of days. People watched the sun rise and fall to tell time. They read the stars as they moved across the sky and noticed how the moon's cycle affected the rivers and the crop. In this quiet, early world, life was simple but deeply connected. People lived close to the earth. They observed the seasons carefully, paid attention to the wind and the rain, and understood that they were part of a much larger whole. There was no internet, no written language, no machines, but there was curiosity, an immense, patient curiosity about life, death, and everything in between. Some of these early people began to turn inward. They sat still for long periods of time, perhaps under trees or beside rivers, listening not just to the world outside, but to the quiet world within. When they breathed deeply, they noticed a calmness inside them. When they sat without moving, they felt connected to the earth, as if their body was a part of the land itself. And so the earliest roots of yoga began to grow, not as a workout or even a spiritual system yet, but as a way of being, a way of observing, a way of connecting. We don't have written records from this time, but we do have clues. Archaeologists digging in the Indus Valley, an area that includes parts of present-day Pakistan and northwestern India, discovered mysterious stone seals. These little stones, some over 4,000 years old, were carved with images of animals, gods, and humans in strange, graceful postures. One in particular, now called the Pashupati seal, shows a figure sitting cross-legged, spine straight, arms resting on knees. The figure wears a horned headdress and is surrounded by animals, suggesting he might be a kind of nature god. To modern eyes, the pose looks strikingly like a yoga posture, perhaps one of the earliest versions of Padmasana or lotus pose. Some scholars believe this figure represents an early form of Shiva, the Hindu god who would later be known as the first yogi. While we can't be certain, this seal gives us a fascinating glimpse into how ancient people may have already been exploring the body and mind through seated stillness. It's easy to imagine these early yogis, though they may not have called themselves that, waking before sunrise, sitting quietly under the sky as birds began to chirp and the air turned gold. Perhaps they closed their eyes and took deep breaths, not to perform a spiritual ritual, but simply to feel more alive. As they breathed in and out, maybe they noticed the way their thoughts slowed, the way the world seemed to expand. They didn't need words like meditation or awareness. They just knew that something special happened when they turned their attention inward. In this early time, there were no yoga mats, no studios, no chanting of Sanskrit mantras. Yoga was not a class you took, it was a discovery, a quiet awakening to the rhythm of your own breath and the beat of your heart. It was a way of living in tune with nature, of recognizing that your body and the earth were made of the same stuff. Imagine what life must have been like then. There were no phones to distract you, no noise from cars or machines. The loudest sound might have been a thunderstorm or a wild animal's cry in the night. You could actually hear your own heartbeat in the silence. And perhaps that stillness, so natural back then, was the perfect condition for the birth of yoga. People didn't write books yet, but they passed down their experiences through stories, through rituals, and through simple practices. If one person sat by the river every morning and returned calm and joyful, others would notice. "What is he doing?" they might ask. And soon they would sit too, learning not by reading or studying, but by doing. Yoga in this early time was likely very different from the yoga we know today. It wasn't about doing poses or stretching muscles. It was about tuning in, paying attention to the world within. These early seekers were probably more interested in what the breath could teach them, or how the mind behaved when they were alone with it. Some may have noticed how focusing on the breath helped them stay calm during stressful times, like when wild animals were near or when food was scarce. Others may have noticed that sitting quietly helped them think more clearly, make better decisions, or feel more connected to their tribe. Without realizing it, they were tapping into the same benefits we now associate with yoga and meditation. Even the rhythms of nature likely shaped their inner journey. When the moon waxed and waned, they might have felt more energized or more inward. When the sun rose, they greeted it with gratitude, warmth soaking their skin. These natural rituals may have been the earliest sun salutations, not formal sequences, but moments of reverence and connection. Their movements were probably simple and instinctive, stretching after sleep, squatting by the fire, walking barefoot across the land. These natural postures helped keep their bodies strong and flexible. Perhaps over time, they began to notice how certain ways of sitting or standing made them feel more peaceful, more awake, more balanced. And from there, the seeds of physical yoga began to sprout. There is something beautiful about the idea that yoga didn't come from a single person or place, but from the collective human experience of being still, breathing deeply, and listening inward. It wasn't created, it was discovered. As centuries passed, these early practices became more organized. But here in the beginning, yoga was as wild and natural as the land itself. It was a practice born from silence, shaped by stillness, and rooted in the earth. It's fascinating to think that the same sun that shines on us today also warmed the backs of those first seekers, that the same moon that guides our meditations now once lit their paths through dark forests, and that the same breath we focus on in modern yoga classes was known, even then, as a doorway to something deep. They might not have called it pranayama yet, but they knew that breath carried power, that slowing it down slowed the mind, that holding it brought clarity, that exhaling brought release. In a way, these ancient people were the first explorers, not of lands or oceans, but of the inner world. They journeyed into the self, using breath and awareness as their only tools. They asked questions without words, and they found answers without. The dawn of yoga wasn't loud or dramatic. It was quiet, soft, like a whisper from the soul saying, "Look within." And somehow that whisper has lasted thousands of years. It echoes in every yoga class today, in every breath we take on the mat, in every moment of stillness we allow ourselves. We may not know the names of these early yogis. Their faces are lost to history, but their legacy lives on in every stretch, every sit, every breath. They remind us that yoga isn't something we do, it's something we return to. Something ancient, something already inside us. Even in today's busy, noisy world, we can still find that ancient quiet. We can still sit, close our eyes, and breathe deeply, just like they did. And in that breath, we become part of something timeless, something sacred. The story of yoga doesn't begin with a book or a guru. It begins with a breath, a simple, patient breath, and the courage to listen to what it has to say. The Vedic Age, 3000 BCA to 1000 BCA. The air in ancient India during the Vedic Age felt thick with mystery and reverence. Fires crackled in sacred corners of villages. The sky stretched wide above grasslands, and priests in flowing robes whispered hymns into the wind. This was a time when the world felt enchanted. Every mountain had a spirit, every river was a goddess, and every fire, lit with careful hands and chants, was a doorway to the heavens. Around this time, the Vedas were born. These weren't ordinary books or dusty scrolls. They were songs, powerful, rhythmic songs that had been passed down for generations, spoken by memory and preserved through the art of listening. The Vedas weren't written for many centuries. They lived inside people's voices. When someone recited them, it wasn't just a performance, it was a sacred act, an offering. The four Vedas, Rig Veda, Samaveda, Yajur Veda, and Atharva Veda, were the heart of early Indian spiritual life. In them, we see the first clear mention of ideas that feel very yogic: breath control, meditation, sacrifice, discipline, harmony between body and mind. In the Rig Veda, for instance, there are hymns that hint at the connection between the physical world and the inner one. It's not yoga as we know it yet, but the seeds are clearly there. A kind of divine awareness fills the verses, like whispers of a greater knowledge beginning to stir. Now imagine life back then. You might be a villager waking up before dawn. The stars still hang low in the sky. You wash your face in the river, light a small fire, and begin to chant, not because someone told you to, but because it feels right. You learned these words from your teacher, who learned it from his teacher, and so on all the way back through time. Your breath becomes a tool, your voice a vessel. As you chant, something inside you settles. You feel in sync with the rising sun, the rustling trees, the quiet of the morning. That feeling, that's yoga. The Vedic rituals were complex. They involved fire offerings, special chants, and very precise movements. But beyond the outer performance, there was an inner transformation happening. The priests, called rishis, weren't just performers. They were seekers. They were trying to reach a deeper state of being. They were trying to understand the universe and their place in it. It wasn't about gods sitting in the sky and throwing lightning bolts. It was about cosmic forces, principles of nature, ideas like truth, order, and balance, satya, artha, dharma. The Vedas were trying to decode reality, and yoga was slowly growing as the key to that mystery. The word yoga itself begins to appear around this time. In Sanskrit, yuj means to yoke, to bind, to unite. Like a farmer yoking his oxen together, the idea was about joining, bringing the mind, the body, and the spirit into harmony. It was about union, not just with the self, but with the whole universe. One of the most fascinating aspects of this era was how everything was sacred. Every breath you took, every word you spoke, there wasn't a separation between spiritual life and daily life. It was all one. You didn't go to a yoga class. You lived yoga by the way you ate, walked, prayed, and spoke. The early practices of yoga were deeply connected to the Vedic fire rituals. The fire, or Agni, wasn't just a flame. It was seen as the messenger between humans and the gods. When you offered ghee or herbs into the flames while chanting mantras, you weren't just performing a rite, you were feeding a sacred bridge. You were participating in the cosmic. In these rituals, posture mattered, breath mattered. The mind had to be sharp and still. You couldn't lose focus. And slowly, the need to train the body and mind for spiritual focus gave rise to early forms of yogic discipline. There's no doubt that many of these early priests practiced deep forms of meditation. They would sit in forests, far from cities, gazing at rivers or firelight, tuning in to something greater than themselves. They didn't have mirrors or social media to distract them. Their world was inward. This was also the time when sacred sounds began to play a huge role. The idea that sound could shape reality, that a single syllable, when repeated with intention, could align your being with the universe. The sound Om appears here for the first time, a seed sound said to contain all other sounds. Think about single sound vibrating from your chest, connecting you to the eternal. That's pure yoga. The language of the Vedas is ancient and complex, but when read with an open heart, it sings of connection, of reverence, of the longing to touch something divine through discipline, devotion, and inner quiet. And perhaps the most beautiful part is this: yoga was never separate from life. It wasn't a technique to escape the world. It was a way to dive deeper into it. So while kings ruled their lands and wars were fought, somewhere in a forest, a rishi sat cross-legged, eyes closed, repeating a mantra with every breath, not to gain power or but to understand what it meant to be alive. As the centuries rolled on, this inner practice grew stronger. The rituals became more refined, and the yogic mindset began to spread beyond priests and into the hearts of regular people. People started realizing they didn't need to be scholars or live in temples to find peace. All they needed was silence, breath, awareness. That quiet revolution of turning inward was yoga in its purest form, and it all began here in the glowing firelight of the Vedic age. Even today, many modern yoga practices draw from this era. The mantras we chant, the breath work we explore, the sense of sacredness we feel when we move and meditate, all of it carries the echo of the Vedic chants. We are not separate from that time. We are the continuation of every deep breath, every moment of stillness, is a thread in a tapestry that was woven thousands of years ago. The Vedic age may seem far away, but its wisdom is still alive, in our hearts, in our brain, in the space between thoughts. That's the magic of yoga. It doesn't belong to the past. It belongs to the present. And in the next chapter of this story, that present will deepen. As seekers moved from rituals to reflection, yoga would take on a whole new form, one rooted not just in chant and fire, but in the silence of the forest and the power of the soul. But before we move forward, take a moment. Breathe in deep, hold it. Exhale slowly. That breath connects you to the same breath taken by rishis long ago. You are part of the same journey. And the story of yoga is in many ways the story of you. Would you like me to begin expanding chapter 3 next? The age of the Upanishads, 1000 BCE to 500 BCE. The world was changing. People who had once gathered around fires to chant ancient hymns began to drift away from the noise of rituals. Something deeper was calling, something quieter. It wasn't that the Vedas had lost their power, not at all. They were still recited with reverence in sacred ceremonies. The songs still echoed in the early morning mist and crackled in the firelight. But slowly, a shift had begun. A quiet revolution of the soul. This was the age of the Upanishads. And if the Vedas were the songs of devotion, the Upanishads were the whispers of wisdom. Not loud or dramatic, but calm and penetrating. They didn't tell you what to worship. They asked you to look inside and ask, who are you really? During this time, people started seeking answers not just outside in the skies or fires, but deep within. They began questioning everything. Who am I? Why am I here? What happens when I die? And perhaps most importantly, is there something eternal beyond this changing world? The sages who wrote the Upanishads, called rishis, just like those of the Vedic age, weren't priests bound to temples. They were wanderers, forest dwellers, hermits who had stepped away from society to meditate under trees and beside rivers. They lived simply, surviving on roots and fruits, wearing coarse clothes and walking barefoot on the forest floor. And yet these humble seekers gave the world some of its most profound spiritual teachings. Their words were quiet but powerful, like stones dropped in a still pond, rippling out through time. The Upanishads introduced a new way of seeing yoga. It wasn't just about rituals or offerings. It was about union, yes, but union with something even greater than before. The self, or Atman, and the absolute, or Brahman. Atman was the deep inner self, the true soul that lay behind your thoughts, emotions, and body. Brahman was the infinite, the eternal source of everything, the ground of all being. And the central idea, that Atman is Brahman, that deep inside you are not separate from the universe. You are the universe. This realization wasn't something you could understand by reading a book. You had to live it, feel it, experience it in stillness. And that's where yoga began to evolve. Meditation became essential. Silence became sacred. Breath was no longer just breath. It was a bridge, a way to slow the mind and journey inward. The forest became the new temple. Stillness, the new ceremony. Sages would sit for hours, sometimes days, cross-legged beneath trees, their backs straight, their eyes closed, breathing gently, watching their thoughts rise and fall like waves. They weren't running away from life, they were diving deep into it. In these long hours of meditation, they discovered something remarkable, that behind the ever-changing world of name and form, there was a stillness, a vast, unchanging silence. And that silence wasn't empty, it was full of presence. The sages called it Satchit Ananda, truth, consciousness, bliss. That was Brahman. And when you touched it, even for a moment, you were transformed. These realizations weren't locked away in secret chambers. They were shared in whispered conversations between teacher and student. That's what Upanishad means, sitting down near. A student would sit quietly beside the master, listening, absorbing, asking questions. There were no PowerPoint slides, no classrooms, just two people sitting close, heart to heart, mind to mind. The teachings were personal, intimate. They were passed on slowly, carefully, like a flame being transferred from one lamp to another. Yoga in this era became less about doing and more about being, less about effort and more about awareness. Postures weren't the focus, the mind was calming it, observing it, observing it, going beyond it. This is where the foundations of what we now call jnana yoga, the path of knowledge, were laid. The idea that through deep inquiry and reflection, you could wake up from the illusion of separateness. You could realize that the true self is never born, never dies. There's a famous teaching from the Chandogya Upanishad. A father tells his son, "You are that, tat tanvamas e," meaning you are not just this body or mind. You are the very essence of the universe. That truth is inside you. Imagine hearing that as a young student, sitting in the cool shade of a tree, listening to your teacher say that everything you're looking for is already within you. It's not out there in the stars or hidden in some distant heaven. It's here, in your breath, in your awareness. That was the power of the Upanishads. They turned the gaze inward. They made yoga an inner journey. This was also when the concept of karma began to take deeper shape. The idea that every action, thought, and intention leaves an imprint. And if we want to be free, we must act with awareness, with kindness, with clarity. The sages saw that the mind was a restless thing, like a monkey, always jumping from thought to thought, and the only way to tame it was through sustained attention, through discipline, through yoga. Breath control, or pranayama, also began to be explored more deep. The breath, they realized, was linked to the mind. Slow the breath, and the mind slows too. Breathe with awareness, and your entire being becomes centered. These practices were subtle but profound. They weren't flashy. They didn't promise quick results. But over time, they changed people, made them more grounded, more present, more free. And perhaps that's the heart of this chapter. Freedom, not the kind of freedom that means doing whatever you want, but the kind that comes from knowing who you truly are. The sages weren't selling a philosophy. They were offering a doorway, a path to inner stillness, a way to touch the eternal in the middle of daily life. As centuries passed, these teachings spread. People memorized the Upanishad. They were chanted beside rivers, whispered by firelight, written on palm leaves, and through them, yoga continued to evolve. It was no longer just the domain of priests or forest hermits. It began to flow into households, into cities, into hearts, and so the flame was carried forward. From ritual to realization, from fire to silence, from the outside world to the vast universe within. This was the gift of the Upanishad, and it would shape the future of yoga in ways the sages could never have imagined. In the next chapter, we'll see how these teachings took root in new soil, how the seeds planted in the forests of ancient India began to grow into systematic schools of thought, preparing the ground for one of yoga's most famous texts, the Bhagavad Gita. But for now, take a moment to sit with the silence, to feel your breath, to remember that the journey of yoga is not about becoming someone new. It's about remembering who you already are. You are that. Tat Tambamas. And the rise of the Bhagavad Gita, 500 BCE to 200 BCE. Time moved forward, as it always does. The ancient forests, once thick with the silence of meditating sages, now echoed with the footsteps of armies. Kingdoms rose and fell. Wars rumbled across the land, and amidst all the noise and chaos, yoga took on a new face, one that would inspire not just seekers and hermits, but warriors too. This chapter of yoga's story takes us to a very different world from the quiet groves of the Upanishads. It brings us to a battlefield, a place filled with the sounds of conch shells and the dust of chariots. But oddly enough, in the middle of all this tension, something extraordinary happened. A conversation took place, a calm, deep spiritual conversation that would change the course of yoga forever. That conversation is known today as the Bhagavad Gita, which literally means the Song of God. Now, to understand the Bhagavad Gita, we have to look at the broader story it belongs to. It's just one small part of a massive Indian epic called the Mahabharata, a story so long and rich that it could fill many lifetimes. But in that huge ocean of stories, the Gita shines like a pearl. It's only about 700 verses long. But in those 700 verses, something powerful lives. Let's set the scene. There's a great war about to begin. Two sets of cousins, the Pandavas and the Kauravas, are facing off over a kingdom. And right in the middle stands Arjuna, a warrior prince from the Pandava side. He's one of the greatest archers the world has ever seen. Strong, brave, honorable, and he's ready to fight. But something strange happens. As the battle is about to start, Arjuna rides his chariot to the center of the battlefield and looks around. He sees friends on both sides, teachers, elders, people he loves and respects, and suddenly he drops his bow. His hands shake, his heart pounds, his breath catches in his chest. He says, "I can't do this. I don't want to kill my kin. I don't want this war. I don't care about victory or glory anymore. What's the point if I have to destroy everything I love to win it?" Now that's a moment of real humanity, isn't it? He's not just a soldier anymore. He's a man torn between duty and heart, between the outer world and the inner one. And who is Arjuna's charioteer? None other than Krishna. But Krishna isn't just a charioteer. He's God in human form, a divine teacher, a friend, a guide. And what follows is not a military strategy session. It's yoga. Yes. In the middle of that battlefield with war just seconds away, Krishna teaches Arjuna yoga, not in the form of stretches or poses, but as a way of life. That's the beauty of the Bhagavad Gita. It doesn't take place in a cave or monastery. It happens in the messy, complicated, emotional middle of life. Krishna begins by explaining something profound. The soul, what we call Atman, never dies. It was never born. It's eternal, untouched by weapons, fire, water, or wind. The body dies. The personality fades. But the self, that's forever. So Arjuna, Krishna says, isn't really killing anyone, because no one can ever truly die. That's just the beginning. Then Krishna dives into different types of yoga, not just the kind that sits cross-legged in stillness, the kind that moves through the world with grace and purpose. One of the most important parts he talks about is karma yoga, the yoga of action. Here's how it works. You do your duty. You take action, but you let go of the results. You plant the seed, but you don't obsess over whether the tree grows or how tall it gets. You just do your part with full presence and heart and leave the rest to the universe. Do your work, Krishna says, but don't cling to the fruits. Now that's hard, isn't it? We live in a world where everything is about results, grades, promotions, likes and shares. But Karma Yoga asks us to act from a place of love and duty, not ego, to let go of the outcome and find freedom in the action itself. Then there's Bhakti Yoga, the yoga of devotion. This path is about love, pure, heartfelt, surrendering love. You see the divine not as some distant force but as your closest friend, your inner beloved, and you give yourself complete through prayer, through trust. It's not about fear or rules. It's about a relationship, a deep soul-to-soul connection with the divine. Arjuna asks Krishna, what if I fail? What if I can't be perfect? And Krishna answers with something beautiful. Even a little of this path frees you from great fear. And no effort is ever wasted. No effort is ever wasted. That's something to hold close, because we all stumble. We all fall. But the Gita reminds us that every step on the path matters. There's also Jnana Yoga in the Gita, the yoga of wisdom, the path of self-inquiry and knowledge, the kind that leads you to realize that your true nature is untouched by all this drama, that deep inside you are still, whole, free. As Arjuna listens, something begins to shift inside him. He sees Krishna not just as a friend, but as the infinite. In one breathtaking moment, Krishna reveals his divine form, a being of endless arms, eyes and faces, light pouring out in every direction, the whole universe swirling within him. It's overwhelming, terrifying, awe-inspiring, and it breaks Arjuna's heart open. He bows down and says, I understand now. I will do what I must, not out of anger or pride, but from a place of clarity. And just like that, yoga became something more. It became a way to live in the world, to act with strength and softness, to be in the middle of chaos, but not lost in it. The Bhagavad Gita wasn't just a teaching for Arjuna, it was for everyone, for anyone who's ever felt overwhelmed by life, who's ever stood at a crossroads, unsure of what to do. It tells us that yoga isn't about escaping the world. It's about engaging with it fully while staying rooted in something deeper. That's why the Gita became one of the most important texts in all of Indian philosophy. It brought together so many threads: devotion, action, knowledge, and wove them into one beautiful tapestry. And people still read it today, not just in India but all over the world, because its message is time. Act with love, surrender the outcome, stay connected to the divine inside you. That's yoga. So in this chapter of our story, yoga stepped off the mountain and onto the battlefield. It became something we could all carry with us, not just in quiet moments of meditation, but in the middle of our messy, busy, beautiful lives. In the next chapter, we'll see how this energy of structure and wisdom gave birth to something even more precise, a system that would change the way yoga was practiced for centuries to come. But for now, maybe sit with this one thought. No effort is ever wasted. Keep walking your path. The light is always within you. The Yoga Sutras of Patanjali, 200 BCE to 400 CE. As time carried on, the great teachings of the Bhagavad Gita began to settle deep into the hearts of seekers and sages alike. Yet, despite its profound influence, there remained something of a gap, something more methodical, a clearer path that could guide practitioners in their everyday lives. What was needed was a structure, a guide that would allow yoga to be practiced, not just in moments of divine insight, but also in the daily rhythms of life. And so, from the depths of ancient Indian wisdom, a great system began to emerge, one that would give yoga its form, its framework, its practices, and its philosophy. This system was codified in what would become known as the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali. Patanjali is one of the most important figures in the history of yoga. His work, the Yoga Sutras, was written somewhere between 200 BCE and 400 CE. It's a collection of 95 verses, short and sweet, designed to provide a clear, practical method for reaching the ultimate goal of yoga, kaivalya, or liberation. The sutras aren't long philosophical essays, but instead concise, powerful statements, each one packed with meaning. What Patanjali did was take the vast ocean of spiritual teachings and distill them into something manageable. He created a manual, a roadmap for how to live the yogic path in an accessible, practical way. At the time Patanjali wrote his sutras, India was a melting pot of religious and philosophical ideas. The Upanishads had already introduced many concepts about the nature of the self and the universe, and the Bhagavad Gita had set the stage for yoga as a spiritual practice that could be applied to every aspect of life. But the approach was still in many ways abstract. It was spiritual, yes, but it also lacked a clear step-by-step process for realizing the ultimate goal. This is where Patanjali stepped in. Patanjali's Yoga Sutras are divided into 4 chapters. These chapters outline the obstacles and challenges on the path, the practices that can help a person overcome them, and the ultimate goal of spiritual realization. They provide a structure that would allow yoga to be practiced systematically, in a way that could be integrated into the day-to-day lives of ordinary people, not just hermits or kings. The first chapter of the sutras is called Samadhi Pade, the chapter on contemplation or absorption. This chapter sets the foundation for everything that follows. Samadhi, Patanjali explains, is the ultimate state of yoga, the deep, transcendent state of being in which the individual self merges with the universal consciousness. It's a state of pure presence, where the mind is still, where ego fades, and where everything is experienced as one. But this state doesn't just happen automatically. It requires discipline, patience, and the practice of dhyana, meditation. Patanjali lays out the obstacles to achieving this state, primarily the distractions of the mind. The second chapter, Sadhana Pade, focuses on the practices of yoga that lead toward this ultimate goal. Sadhana refers to the effort or discipline required for achieving yoga. This chapter introduces the famous 8 limbs of yoga, or Ashtanga yoga, which serve as the core of Patanjali's teachings. These 8 limbs of yoga, or Ashtanga yoga, which serve as the core of Patanjali's teachings. These 8 limbs are 1. Yama, ethical guidelines, such as non-violence, ahimsa, truthfulness, satya, and non-possessiveness, aparigraha. 2. Niyama, personal observances, like cleanliness, satya, contentment, santosha, and devotion, ishvara, pranadidana. 3. Asana, the practice of physical postures that prepare the body for meditation. 4. Pranayama, the regulation of breath to control the life force, prana. 5. Pratyahara, withdrawal of the senses from external distractions. 6. Dharana, concentration, the ability to focus the mind on a single point. 7. Dhyana, meditation, the practice of sustained, uninterrupted concentration. 8. Samadhi, the final stage of yoga, bliss, enlightenment, or absorption into the divine. Each of these limbs builds upon the last, creating a progressive path to spiritual realization. Yama and Niyama are the ethical foundations, teaching the practitioner how to live harmoniously in the world. Asana, the physical postures, help prepare the body so that it can sit comfortably for meditation. Pranayama, the breath control techniques, calm the mind and regulate the flow of energy within the body. Pratyahara, the withdrawal of the senses, allows the practitioner to turn inward, away from the distractions of the external world. Dharana, concentration, is the practice of fixing the mind on a single point, a step toward the deep focus of meditation. Dhyana, the actual process of meditation, takes that concentration to the next level, moving toward the quieting of the mind. And then, finally, Samadhi, where all the effort culminates in the highest state of consciousness. This structure was revolutionary. It provided a clear, step-by-step guide that anyone could follow. You didn't need to be a philosopher, a king, or a hermit to practice yoga. You just needed to be willing to work on yourself, physically, mentally, and emotionally. This was a yoga that could be practiced by anyone, in any situation. The third chapter, Vibhuti Pade, is the chapter on the powers or extraordinary abilities that can arise as a result of deep practice. These powers are called siddhis, and Patanjali warns that they can become distractions on the path. They are not the goal of yoga, but rather byproducts of intense practice. Still, many practitioners sought these powers as they were often seen as signs of spiritual progress. Patanjali reminds us, however, that true liberation is not about magical powers or worldly achievements. It's about realizing the true nature of the self, something beyond the mind, beyond the body, and beyond all external phenomena. Finally, the fourth chapter, Kaivalya Pade, is the chapter on liberation. Here, Patanjali talks about the ultimate goal of yoga, freedom from the cycles of birth and death, liberation from the ego, and union with the divine. This is the state of Kaivalya, which means aloneness or solitude, a state of pure, unbroken consciousness, where the individual self realizes its oneness with the universe. Patanjali explains that liberation occurs when the mind has been fully purified and no longer identifies with the body or the world. At this point, the soul is free from the limitations of the material world and experiences true bliss and freedom. Through the Yoga Sutras, Patanjali brought order and clarity to the practice of yoga. His teachings emphasized the importance of discipline and consistency. Yoga was not something that could be mastered overnight, it was a lifelong journey. But with patience, perseverance, and the proper guidance, anyone could walk the path toward enlightenment. The influence of the Yoga Sutras spread far and wide. Over time, the teachings were passed down through countless generations, practiced by millions of people across India. But what's remarkable is that Patanjali's framework didn't just stay in India. As the centuries passed, yoga traveled beyond India's borders, eventually reaching the West. And while the practice has evolved and taken on new forms in the modern world, the essence of Patanjali's teachings remains as relevant today as it was over 2,000 years ago. So, as we move through time, we find that yoga is no longer just a practice for the few, the secluded, or the ascetic. Yoga is for everyone, and Patanjali's Yoga Sutras are one of the most important reasons. In the next chapter, we'll explore how yoga's journey continued into the medieval period, when new schools of thought and new forms of practice began to take shape. But for now, let's pause and reflect on the profound legacy Patanjali left behind, a legacy that has shaped the practice of yoga for millennia and continues to inspire millions today. The rise of Hatha Yoga, 500 CE to 1500 CE. After Patanjali laid down the structured, philosophical foundation for yoga through his Yoga Sutras, the practice took on different forms and began to evolve in ways that would shape its modern incarnation. For many centuries, yoga was largely seen as an intellectual or meditative pursuit, something for those who were ready to dive deeply into the abstract nature of the self. It wasn't widely accessible to the everyday person. Most people didn't have the time or the means to sit in meditation for hours or live a life of extreme asceticism. But yoga's story was far from over. As centuries passed, new practices and techniques began to emerge that made yoga more accessible, more grounded in the physical body and its well-being. And so in the medieval period, a new school of yoga began to take shape, Hatha Yoga. The roots of Hatha Yoga can be traced back to around 500 CE to 1500 CE, a period when India was experiencing significant spiritual and political changes. The rise of Hatha Yoga marked a departure from the more meditative practices of the past and brought yoga to a more practical, physical level. It combined elements of breath control, physical postures, and purification techniques, focusing not just on the mind but on the body's health and energy flow. In essence, it was about finding balance between body and mind, a harmonious union that allowed for spiritual growth through physical wellness. Before the rise of Hatha Yoga, most of the yoga practiced in India was linked to the various schools of thought that focused on mental control and meditation. However, in the medieval period, there was a shift in focus. The ascetic yogis, or those who were living in isolation away from society, began to experiment with physical postures to improve their physical endurance and strength during long periods of meditation. This was the beginning of the Hatha Yoga system. The word Hatha itself is derived from two Sanskrit roots, Hashe, meaning the sun, and Fe, meaning the moon. In the context of yoga, this represents the balancing of the opposing forces of the body and mind. The practice of Hatha Yoga is essentially about creating harmony between the sun and moon within us, the active and the passive, the male and female energies, the hot and the cold. In other words, it's the practice of uniting opposites to create a state of balance. This balance isn't just about the mind or the spirit, but also the physical body. Hatha Yoga's emergence can be traced to ancient texts, like the Hatha Yoga Pradipika, which was written in the 15th century by the sage Aswatmarama. The Hatha Yoga Pradipika, like Patanjali's Yoga Sutras, became a key text for yogis who wanted to practice yoga with a focus on the body. It is a comprehensive guide that covers the various postures, asanas, breathing techniques, pranayama, purification practices, kriyas, and meditation methods used in Hatha Yoga. The text itself is written in a simple, straightforward style, aimed at making yoga accessible to those who might not have been well versed in more abstract forms of yoga. In essence, it's a manual that teaches how to use the body and breath to support spiritual practice. Before we get into the specific techniques outlined in the Hatha Yoga Pradipika, it's important to understand that the practice of Hatha Yoga was designed not just for physical fitness, but as a way to prepare the body for deeper spiritual practices. The ancient yogis believed that the body was a temple, and to meditate deeply, one needed a healthy and capable body to support the mind's focus. Therefore, physical postures, asanas, were developed to increase the body's flexibility and strength. The ultimate goal of these practices was to make the body a more efficient vessel for spiritual energy. The Hatha Yoga Pradipika teaches that there are three main practices in Hatha Yoga: asana, pranayama, and mudra. The practice of asana refers to the physical postures that help strengthen and stretch the body. These postures were specifically designed to make sitting for meditation more comfortable, allowing practitioners to sit for hours without experiencing discomfort. Over time, these asanas became more complex and varied, but at their core they were meant to cultivate stillness, calm, and focus in the practitioner's mind. Pranayama, which is the control of breath, is another integral aspect of Hatha Yoga. Breath is considered the life force of the body. Through breathing, we take in vital energy, prana, and expel toxins. Pranayama is designed to regulate the flow of prana within the body, helping to calm the mind and purify the nervous system. The practice of pranayama is typically done in conjunction with asanas, and it's thought to help deepen the practice, allowing the body and mind to reach higher states of consciousness. The third element, mudra, refers to specific gestures or seals that are used in yoga practice. Mudras are believed to influence the flow of energy within the body, creating certain energetic shifts. These gestures can be used during meditation, pranayama, or asana practice, and they are believed to help balance the body's energy. In the medieval period, a major shift occurred in the approach to yoga. The old, more intellectual path of yoga began to give way to a more practical, physically oriented approach. This transformation was largely influenced by the rise of Hatha Yoga and its emphasis on physical postures, breath control, and energy manipulation. The body, which had previously been seen as secondary to the mind, was now viewed as an essential tool for spiritual growth. This was a huge shift in the way yoga was practiced, and it made yoga far more accessible to the general population. In addition to the teachings of the Hatha Yoga Pradipika, another influential text during this time was the Gheranda Samhita, written by the sage Gheranda in the 17th century. Like the Hatha Yoga Pradipika, the Gheranda Samhita offers detailed instructions on the physical practices of yoga, including asanas, pranayama, and mudra. That the Gheranda Samhita also includes the practice of kriyas or purification techniques, which were meant to help cleanse the body of impurities and prepare it for deeper meditation. These purification practices are seen as essential for anyone serious about pursuing the yogic path, as they clear out physical toxins and emotional blockages, allowing the practitioner to experience higher states of consciousness. Hatha Yoga, especially in its medieval form, was a practice that went beyond just physical fitness. It was about creating harmony in the body and mind, balancing the elements of fire and water, activity and passivity, strength and softness. The aim was to create a healthy, purified body that could support the deeper spiritual practices of meditation and contemplation. The impact of Hatha Yoga during this period cannot be overstated. It was during this time that yoga moved beyond the confines of the ascetic hermits and became more widely practiced by people from all walks of life. Hatha Yoga made yoga a more practical and approachable practice, one that could be integrated into everyday life. This was yoga that could be done by anyone, anywhere, not just those living in caves or monasteries. The influence of Hatha Yoga continued to spread throughout India, and by the time the British arrived in India in the 18th century, yoga was already becoming a well-known part of the Indian spiritual landscape. But it wasn't just in India that yoga was having an impact. As we'll see in the next chapters, yoga was about to take on a global form, influencing the Western world and eventually becoming the yoga that we know today. In the next chapter we will explore the rise of yoga in the West and how Hatha Yoga became a worldwide phenomenon, adapting to new cultures and new generations. But for now, let's take a moment to reflect on the profound legacy of medieval yoga, the period in which Hatha Yoga emerged as the practice that would eventually transform the world. The global spread of yoga, 1500 CE to 1900 CE. By the time the 16th century rolled around, yoga had deep roots in India, where it had been practiced in various forms for thousands of years. The evolution of Hatha Yoga had transformed the practice, making it more physically accessible to people from all walks of life. Yet, as centuries passed and the world began to shrink with the rise of empires and exploration, yoga's journey was far from over. It was about to take a dramatic leap from its native land and spread to the far corners of the earth, taking on new forms and influencing people of all backgrounds. The period from 1500 CE to 1900 CE represents a time of tremendous global change. The age of exploration was in full swing, with European explorers traveling to distant lands in search of riches, knowledge, and new territories. In this age of discovery, the world was becoming more interconnected, and cultures from different parts of the globe were coming into contact with one another in ways they never had before. But yoga, despite its deep history in India, had not yet been introduced to the Western world in a meaningful way. That was about to change. The first significant encounters between Westerners and yoga came during the colonial period, when British explorers, scholars, and officials began to take an interest in Indian spirituality. India was under British colonial rule at this time, and British officials often encountered Indian yogis during their travels across the subcontinent. It was in this context that yoga first began to catch the attention of the Western world, though the British officials who encountered yoga often viewed it with a mixture of curiosity and skepticism. Many saw yoga as a strange, esoteric practice that was part of the mystical traditions of India, something far removed from the rationality and scientific progress of the West. Despite the skepticism, yoga began to slowly infiltrate the Western consciousness, thanks to a small number of Indian yogis who traveled to the West to share their practices. One of the earliest and most influential figures in this global spread of yoga was Swami Vivekananda, an Indian monk who became a global ambassador for yoga in the late 19th century. Vivekananda's journey to the West in 1893 marked a pivotal moment in the history of yoga's global expansion. Vivekananda was invited to speak at the Parliament of the World's Religions in Chicago in 1893. His speech at the event was a groundbreaking moment for the world's understanding of Indian philosophy, meditation, and yoga. At this historic gathering, Vivekananda spoke of the unity of all religions and the importance of spiritual practice in everyday life. He extolled the virtues of Vedanta, a school of Hindu philosophy, and yoga, explaining to the Western world that yoga was not just about physical postures, but was a path to self-realization, a way to connect with the divine within. Vivekananda's charismatic personality and profound teachings made an immediate impact on many in the audience. He described yoga as a science of the mind and spirit, something that could help people transcend the limitations of their physical bodies and achieve higher states of consciousness. While yoga had previously been seen in the West as an obscure practice associated with mysticism, Vivekananda presented it in a way that resonated with the intellectual and spiritual currents of the time. His message was clear: yoga was not just for the ascetic yogis of India, but for everyone, regardless of background, religion, or nationality. Vivekananda's success in the West was groundbreaking, and it sparked a wave of interest in yoga and Indian philosophy. After his speech, he spent several years traveling and teaching in the United States and Europe, where he continued to share his insights into yoga and Vedanta. He was instrumental in introducing the Western world to the deeper, philosophical aspects of yoga, focusing on meditation, self-awareness, and spiritual growth. His teachings were well received by many, and he helped pave the way for other Indian spiritual leaders to travel to the West and share their wisdom. One of the significant things that Vivekananda did was to articulate the importance of yoga not just as a physical discipline but as a holistic system for personal transformation. He stressed that yoga was a way to cultivate a deeper understanding of oneself and the world around us, a practice that could lead to greater peace, harmony, and spiritual fulfillment. This was a perspective that resonated deeply with the growing spiritual movements in the West, particularly with the rise of the New Thought and Transcendentalist movements, which emphasized personal transformation, self-discovery, and the exploration of spiritual practices beyond traditional religious structures. In the decades that followed Vivekananda's teachings, yoga began to slowly take root in the West. However, the practice was still seen as something exotic and niche, and it was mostly confined to spiritual circles and intellectuals who were drawn to Eastern philosophy. It wasn't until the early 20th century that yoga truly began to find a wider audience in the West. One of the key figures in this period was Paramahansa Yogananda, another Indian spiritual teacher who played a pivotal role in spreading yoga to the Western world. Yogananda arrived in the United States in 1920 and quickly became a popular figure among Americans interested in spirituality. His book, Autobiography of a Yogi, which was published in 1946, became a classic and introduced millions of readers to the spiritual depth of yoga and meditation. Yogananda emphasized the importance of Kriya Yoga, a form of meditation and energy control, which he taught to students around the world. His teachings focused on the idea that yoga was a tool for direct spiritual experience, something that could bring people closer to God and the true essence of their being. During the early 20th century, the spread of yoga in the West also benefited from the increasing interest in physical fitness and wellness. As modern science began to understand more about the body and its need for movement, yoga's physical aspects started to gain traction as a form of exercise. Westerners began to appreciate the benefits of yoga as a way to increase flexibility, strength, and relaxation. Yoga classes began to be held in major cities like New York and Los Angeles, and by the 1960s and 1970s it had become an integral part of the counterculture movement, which was seeking alternative forms of spirituality and self-expression. The 1960s was a time of great social change in the West, with many people turning away from traditional religions and seeking new ways to experience spiritual growth. Yoga became part of this larger trend, with many young people flocking to yoga studios and ashrams, drawn to its promise of inner peace, self-discovery, and a deeper connection to the universe. The hippie movement, with its emphasis on mindfulness, consciousness expansion, and holistic living, found a natural ally in yoga. As a result, yoga became increasingly popular, and by the 1980s it had entered the mainstream. As yoga grew in popularity, it also began to evolve. In the West, many different styles of yoga emerged, some focusing more on physical postures, others on breathwork and meditation. Vinyasa, Ashtanga, Iyengar, and Kundalini yoga all became widely practiced, each offering its own unique approach to the ancient practice. These styles, while rooted in traditional Indian yoga, were adapted to meet the needs and preferences of modern practitioners. The result was a global phenomenon that transcended its origins and became a dynamic, living tradition that continues to evolve. The spread of yoga in the 20th century wasn't just limited to the physical practice of postures. It was also a time of deep cultural exchange between the East and the West, and yoga played a role in bridging that gap. In the coming years, yoga would continue to transform and adapt, becoming one of the most popular and influential spiritual practices in the world. But yoga's story doesn't end here. In the next chapter, we will explore how yoga continued to evolve and thrive in the modern world, adapting to new generations and new challenges, while staying true to its ancient roots. Yoga in the Modern World, 1900 CE, to present. As we step into the 20th century, yoga's journey takes an exciting and transformative turn. What was once a quiet, esoteric practice in the remote corners of India began to spread with an unstoppable force across the globe, and in the process, it evolved into something far more than just a spiritual discipline. The modern world, with its ever-changing pace and demands, was about to reshape yoga in ways that even its earliest practitioners couldn't have imagined. By the time the 21st century rolled around, yoga was no longer just a spiritual path for the few. It had become a worldwide phenomenon, practiced by millions of people from every walk of life, regardless of nationality, religion, or background. The roots of yoga in the West had already been sown in the late 19th and early 20th centuries by influential teachers like Swami Vivekananda and Paramahansa Yogananda. However, it was in the mid-20th century that yoga began to truly take hold in the United States and Europe, where it became intertwined with the counterculture movements of the 1960s and 1970s. The cultural landscape at that time was ripe for new ideas, and many people, especially younger generations, were searching for something deeper, something that could provide them with meaning, peace, and a sense of connection to the universe. Yoga, with its emphasis on inner peace, mindfulness, and holistic living, fit perfectly into this search. It became an essential part of the quest for a more conscious, self-aware lifestyle. The transformation of yoga in the modern world was a process of adaptation. The physical postures of yoga, known as asanas, began to take center stage. In the West, yoga had traditionally been seen as a deeply spiritual practice that involved meditation and mental discipline. Yet over time, the Western world's fascination with the body, along with a growing awareness of the importance of physical health, led to an increased focus on yoga's physical aspects. The desire to improve flexibility, strength, and overall health through yoga began to captivate a broader audience. The early 20th century saw the rise of teachers like Krishnamacharya, who, while maintaining the spiritual roots of yoga, popularized the practice of physical postures as a means to improve health and well-being. Krishnamacharya's students, including B.K. Iyengar and T.K.V. Desikachar, would go on to further adapt yoga for modern times, each contributing their own interpretations and methodologies. It was in the mid-1900s that yoga began to appear more and more in Western fitness studios. This was a period of significant cultural exchange, as people in the West sought to tap into the ancient wisdom of the East. The world was beginning to recognize the mind-body connection and the impact that a healthy body could have on mental clarity and emotional balance. Yoga, with its ability to bring together physical exercise, breath control, and meditation, began to be seen not just as an alternative to traditional Western exercise but as a holistic approach to wellness. With figures like Indra Devi, one of the first women to bring yoga to the West, and the aforementioned B.K.S. Iyengar and T.K.V. Desikachar, yoga's popularity grew rapidly. But yoga was far more than just a fitness trend. The post-war period was also a time of great social and spiritual upheaval, and many people felt the need for deeper meaning and connection. The rise of transcendental meditation, TM, in the 1950s, championed by figures like Maharishi Mahesh Yogi, and the growing interest in Eastern philosophy and spiritual practices, opened the door for yoga to be embraced as part of a larger spiritual awakening. This was a time when people were starting to question the materialism of the Western world, seeking instead a more spiritually enriched existence. The counterculture movements, including the Beat Generation and the hippie movement, celebrated non-conformity, personal freedom, and a connection to nature, making yoga a perfect fit. The practice became synonymous with peace, love, and mindfulness, often seen as a form of resistance to the violence and chaos of the Vietnam War and the social tensions of the era. As the decades passed, yoga's reach continued to expand. In the 1980s and 1990s, it entered the mainstream of American culture, further popularized by celebrities, fitness gurus, and media personalities who embraced the practice as part of their daily routines. By this time, yoga had been distilled into an array of styles, some of which focused on strength and endurance, like Ashtanga and Vinyasa yoga, while others focused on relaxation and flexibility, like Hatha and Yin. Yoga studios were popping up in cities across the globe, and even large gyms and fitness centers began to offer yoga classes as part of their regular programming. In this period, yoga had truly become a household name. The growing popularity of yoga was closely tied to the broader wellness movement that emerged during this time. Yoga became more than just a physical activity. It became a symbol of self-care, mindfulness, and holistic living. As mental health awareness increased, people began to understand the connection between physical exercise and emotional well-being, and yoga fit into this understanding perfectly. Whether it was to relieve stress, ease anxiety, or simply improve flexibility, people of all ages were turning to yoga to find balance and calm in their lives. Despite its increasing popularity, yoga remained rooted in its ancient tradition. The modern practice of yoga still holds many of the principles found in the earliest teachings, whether it's the yamas, ethical guidelines, the emphasis on breathwork, pranayama, or the pursuit of inner peace and spiritual awakening through meditation. The foundational texts of yoga, like the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali and the Bhagavad Gita, continued to guide practitioners, even as yoga adapted to meet the needs of modern life. One of the most significant changes in the modern era has been the development of yoga therapy. In the past few decades, yoga has been used to treat a wide variety of health issues, including chronic pain, stress, anxiety, and depression. Medical professionals have recognized the healing potential of yoga, incorporating it into physical therapy programs, rehabilitation centers, and hospitals. Yoga's therapeutic benefits are supported by scientific research, which shows that regular practice can improve cardiovascular health, reduce stress hormones, and even promote brain health. This has led to an even greater acceptance of yoga in Western culture, where it is now seen as an effective tool for maintaining overall health and well-being. In the 21st century, yoga's popularity has skyrocketed even further. The rise of social media and online platforms has brought yoga into the homes of millions of people worldwide. Yoga teachers from all corners of the globe now share their classes and teachings on platforms like YouTube, Instagram, and Zoom, making it easier than ever for people to practice in the comfort of their own homes. The practice has become more inclusive, with various styles and approaches being developed to cater to different needs, abilities, and interests. From hot yoga to aerial yoga, power yoga to prenatal yoga, there is now a style for everyone, ensuring that yoga remains accessible to people of all ages, backgrounds, and physical ability. In the modern world, yoga has become more than just a practice. It has become a lifestyle. Many people use yoga as a foundation for their entire approach to living, incorporating its principles into their daily routines, relationships, and work habits. The practice encourages mindfulness, presence, and a deep connection to oneself and the world around them. Yoga has become a powerful tool for personal growth, a way to cultivate patience, resilience, and gratitude in a world that often seems chaotic and overwhelming. As we move forward, yoga continues to evolve. It has become an integral part of modern wellness culture, embraced by people from all walks of life, from corporate executives to stay-at-home parents. As the world becomes more fast-paced and stress-inducing, the need for practices that promote mindfulness, relaxation, and inner peace is greater than ever. Yoga, with its ancient wisdom and timeless appeal, is likely to continue growing and evolving as it meets the needs of the modern world. Yoga's journey from the quiet forests and ashrams of ancient India to the bustling cities and living rooms of the modern world is nothing short of remarkable. As we look ahead, one thing is clear: yoga is not just a practice, it's a way of life, and its influence will continue to shape the world for generations to come. The globalization of yoga, 21st century and beyond. As the world moved deeper into the 21st century, yoga entered an era of rapid globalization, one that would transform it from a practice confined to the corners of India into a truly global phenomenon, embraced by millions. What began as a spiritual discipline practiced by a small, select group of ascetics, seekers, and sages in ancient India had over time spread to the West, where it underwent a transformation that made it accessible, attractive, and beneficial to people across the globe. The 21st century marked the final chapter in yoga's expansion, where its integration into modern lifestyles, from wellness trends to corporate boardrooms, became commonplace. With the rise of the internet and the explosion of social media, yoga found itself entering a new frontier. Platforms like Instagram, YouTube, and Facebook allowed yoga instructors to reach audiences far beyond their local communities. In a world that increasingly relied on technology, yoga found a home in the digital age, with virtual classes and online tutorials making it easier for anyone, anywhere, to practice. This virtual wave of accessibility was an unexpected but transformative moment in the history of yoga, allowing even those in remote areas or with busy lifestyles to learn from renowned teachers and connect with the global yoga community. The worldwide popularity of yoga in the early 2000s and beyond also coincided with a greater cultural shift toward mindfulness, wellness, and holistic health. Yoga was no longer just a physical practice, but had become integrated into the broader wellness movement, one that emphasizes mental, emotional, and spiritual well-being alongside physical health. In the West, as people's awareness of mental health challenges grew, yoga emerged as a powerful tool for stress management, anxiety reduction, and emotional balance. It was seen as a natural complement to therapy, meditation, and self-care routines, with both individuals and healthcare professionals embracing its benefits as a tool for maintaining overall health. In the corporate world, yoga's influence grew steadily. Companies, recognizing the need to support the well-being of their employees in increasingly high-stress environments, began offering yoga classes in the work. These corporate yoga programs were seen as a way to reduce employee burnout, improve focus, and foster a sense of community within teams. The benefits of yoga were not only physical, but also emotional and mental, helping employees feel more grounded, productive, and focused. Companies from Silicon Valley to Wall Street began incorporating yoga into their wellness programs, and it became common to see yoga mats rolled out in boardrooms or offices during lunch breaks, as employees took time to relax, stretch, and center themselves. Yoga's global journey also saw its embrace by individuals from every corner of society, regardless of age, background, or profession. It became a practice that transcended cultural, social, and geographical barriers. Whether it was a teenager in New York City, a retiree in Sydney, or a mother in Mumbai, yoga was something that could be practiced by anyone who was willing to open their minds and hearts to its teachings. The accessibility of yoga in the modern world meant that it was no longer a discipline reserved for the elite or spiritually inclined. It had become part of the daily routine for people from all walks of life. At the same time, the diversity of yoga practices expanded in response to the growing demand for different forms of yoga. In the 21st century, it was no longer a simple question of practicing hatha yoga or vinyasa yoga. New styles emerged that were tailored to the needs and preferences of practitioners. Power yoga, for example, emerged as a fast-paced, high-intensity version of traditional yoga, designed to build strength and endurance. Hot yoga, popularized by Bikram Choudhury, took yoga practice into heated rooms to increase flexibility and detoxification. There were also specialized forms like prenatal yoga, which catered to pregnant women, and restorative yoga, which focused on relaxation and recovery. Yoga also found its way into more unusual settings, like aerial yoga, where practitioners perform poses while suspended in hammocks, and acro yoga, a partner-based practice that combines acrobatics and yoga. These variations made yoga even more adaptable and appealing, ensuring its place as a dynamic and ever-evolving practice for modern times. With yoga becoming so widespread, it was inevitable that it would begin to evolve into something that transcended its traditional root. In the process, some critics began to question the commercialization of yoga and the way its deeper spiritual elements were being stripped away in favor of consumer-friendly, brand-driven approaches. Some saw yoga studios, celebrity endorsements, and expensive yoga retreats as creating a form of yoga that was more about profits than principle. Yet, for the majority of practitioners, yoga was still seen as a deeply personal practice, a means of self-discovery, healing, and inner peace. The ongoing debate between preserving yoga's spiritual essence and adapting it for the modern world continues to this day. For some, the essence of yoga lies in its mindfulness and its ability to connect the body, mind, and spirit. For others, yoga is simply a tool for physical well-being and stress relief. Regardless of the differing perspectives, the fundamental essence of yoga, whether practiced as a spiritual discipline or a physical fitness routine, remains strong. Another significant aspect of yoga's evolution in the 21st century is the growing emphasis on mindfulness. As modern society becomes increasingly fast-paced and distracted, yoga's ability to foster mindfulness has become one of its most valuable features. Practitioners are encouraged to bring their attention to the present moment, whether that means focusing on their breath during a challenging pose or being fully aware of the sensations in their body during a meditation practice. This focus on mindfulness has spilled over into other areas of life as well, with many people incorporating mindfulness practices into their daily routines. Yoga's emphasis on being present in the moment, letting go of distractions, and connecting with one's inner self is more important than ever in a world where distractions are constant and the pace of life is relentless. The integration of yoga into modern medicine has also become a key area of growth. Increasingly, healthcare professionals are recognizing the healing potential of yoga for a variety of conditions, from chronic pain to mental health disorders. Yoga therapy, which combines physical postures with breathwork and meditation, has been used as a complementary treatment for conditions such as depression, anxiety, and PTSD. It is also being used to treat physical ailments, including back pain, arthritis, and heart disease. This acceptance by the medical community has helped to cement yoga's place as not just a physical practice, but as an essential part of a holistic approach to health. As we look ahead, the future of yoga seems limitless. In the coming years, we may see even more innovations in the ways yoga is practiced and experienced. The integration of technology into yoga practices, from virtual reality yoga classes to AI-driven personalized sessions, could open up even more possibilities for those seeking to deepen their practice. At the same time, the spirit of yoga, its emphasis on mindfulness, compassion, and interconnectedness, will continue to be a guiding force, helping practitioners navigate the challenges of modern life. The principles of yoga, with their emphasis on self-awareness, balance, and respect for the world around us, are more relevant today than ever before. Yoga's global journey has been one of remarkable transformation, from its humble beginnings in ancient India to its current status as a global cultural phenomenon. Its path reflects the changing needs and aspirations of humanity, adapting to fit the demands of an ever-evolving world while maintaining the essence of its timeless teachings. Whether practiced in a serene studio, a bustling office, or a quiet home, yoga continues to offer a path to greater health, peace, and self-awareness. The journey of yoga is ongoing, and its future holds the promise of even greater possibilities, as it continues to shape the way we live, connect, and experience life in the 21st century and beyond. Yoga in the modern day. Challenges, adaptations, and the future. As yoga has evolved over the centuries, its place in the modern world has become ever more multifaceted, weaving itself into the fabric of daily life for millions of people across the globe. What began as a deeply spiritual practice with roots in ancient India has transformed into a widely accessible discipline, embraced by people of all backgrounds, cultures, and professions. However, as yoga's popularity continues to soar, it also faces new challenges and opportunities that shape its evolution in the 21st century. This chapter will explore how yoga is adapting to modern times, its impact on contemporary society, and the challenges it faces as it continues to evolve in the face of commercialization, technology, and cultural shift. One of the most striking features of yoga's modern-day popularity is its pervasive presence in popular culture. Yoga has become not only a physical practice, but a symbol of health, wellness, and mindfulness. We see yoga influencers and teachers everywhere, from social media platforms like Instagram and YouTube to mainstream media outlets, where celebrities tout the benefits of yoga in interviews and advertisements. Yoga's image as a stress-relieving, body-slimming practice has made it an appealing choice for people seeking to improve their mental and physical health in a world that is constantly moving faster and faster. In many ways, yoga has become a status symbol, synonymous with a certain lifestyle, one that values self-care, well-being, and an image of calm amidst the chaos of modern life. Yet, the very popularity of yoga in the mainstream has raised concerns about its commercialization. Yoga studios, once intimate spaces for spiritual practice and community connection, have become big business. The proliferation of yoga gear, trendy athleisure wear, and high-end yoga retreats has led some to question whether yoga is being watered down to fit into a consumer-driven market. Some critics argue that yoga's transformation into a commodified product has disconnected it from its roots, its ancient teachings, and its spiritual essence. Yoga, once a holistic practice designed to promote balance and self-realization, is now sometimes viewed as a trendy workout that is marketed to the masses. However, not everyone sees this commercialization of yoga as a negative development. For many, the accessibility of yoga classes in gyms, online platforms, and community centers has made it available to a much broader audience than ever before. Yoga's growth in popularity has allowed people from all walks of life to experience its benefits that go far beyond just physical. Yoga's principles of mindfulness, breath control, and mental clarity are being embraced by a generation that is grappling with stress, anxiety, and an overwhelming sense of disconnection in an increasingly digital world. The idea of taking time out of a busy day to connect with one's body and mind, to breathe deeply, and to find a moment of stillness has never been more relevant. In this way, the commercialization of yoga has made it a more integral part of people's lives, offering an avenue for wellness and self-care that many individuals were previously unaware of. Yoga's adaptation to the digital age is another key factor in its modernization. In the past, yoga was primarily taught in person, at local studios, retreat centers, and within communities. But in today's fast-paced world, technology has made it possible for people to access yoga classes from the comfort of their homes, at any time of day. With the rise of apps, online yoga platforms, and YouTube channels, yoga has become more accessible than ever before. People no longer need to live near a yoga studio or find a teacher to begin their practice. They can simply open an app on their phone or tablet and start practicing with a teacher from anywhere in the world. While this accessibility has allowed yoga to reach a broader audience, it has also raised questions about how to maintain the integrity of the practice in the digital space. The lack of direct guidance from a teacher can make it harder for beginners to learn proper technique or to receive personalized. In some ways, yoga has become more transactional. Someone signs up for an online class, follows the instructions, and then moves on with their day. In this digital age, the personal connections and community that were once inherent in the yoga practice can sometimes feel lost. The spiritual aspects of yoga, its focus on self-awareness, presence, and inner peace, can feel less emphasized when the practice is viewed on a screen. As people seek convenience and quick results, the deep, introspective nature of yoga may be overshadowed by the desire for fitness goals, weight loss, or stress relief. Moreover, the increasing emphasis on physical appearance in yoga is another significant trend that has shaped its modern-day form. Yoga, once a practice focused on mental clarity, spiritual growth, and physical health, has become intertwined with body image. Many yoga studios and influencers emphasize the physical benefits of yoga, such as flexibility, strength, and toning, which can sometimes lead to unrealistic expectations. This shift in focus from inner transformation to outward appearance has raised concerns about the potential for yoga to perpetuate body ideals and contribute to the pressure many individuals feel about how they look. Critics argue that this commercialization of yoga as a physical workout may lead to a superficial understanding of the practice, one that fails to acknowledge the deeper, spiritual and philosophical aspects that yoga was originally meant to nurture. Despite these challenges, yoga continues to thrive and adapt in the modern world. Many teachers and practitioners are working to bring yoga back to its roots, focusing on its deeper philosophical teachings and encouraging students to look beyond the physical postures. This shift in focus is particularly important as yoga becomes increasingly integrated into therapy and healing practice. Yoga therapy, which combines physical postures with breathing exercises, meditation, and mindfulness, is being used as a complementary treatment for a wide range of conditions, from chronic pain and injuries to mental health challenges like depression and anxiety. It is also being used to support recovery from trauma and to help people develop a greater sense of self-awareness and emotional well-being. The healing potential of yoga is becoming more widely recognized, and its integration into healthcare practices offers a promising way forward for the future of the practice. Looking ahead, it is clear that yoga will continue to evolve in response to the needs of modern society. The challenges it faces, such as commercialization, digitalization, and the emphasis on physical appearance, are not insignificant, but they are also opportunities for yoga to grow and adapt while staying true to its core principles. As yoga continues to evolve, it will likely become an even more integral part of the global conversation about health and well-being. Its timeless teachings of mindfulness, self-awareness, and balance will continue to resonate in a world that is often in a state of imbalance, stress, and disconnection. Whether practiced in a studio, at home, or through an online class, yoga will continue to be a pathway to healing and self-discovery for millions of people. The future of yoga is bright, with endless possibilities for growth and innovation. As long as its core teachings of peace, mindfulness, and self-awareness are preserved, yoga will continue to evolve in ways that enrich the lives of those who practice. The practice of yoga has already made a profound impact on the world, and its potential to foster greater health, peace, and connection is only just beginning to be realized. Yoga is no longer just a practice. It is a movement that continues to change the world, one breath at a time. The future of yoga, integrating ancient wisdom into modern life. As we step into the future, yoga continues to be a practice that connects the ancient with the modern. In a world that is increasingly fast-paced, disconnected, and driven by external forces, yoga remains a powerful tool to bring balance, awareness, and peace into daily life. But what does the future hold for yoga? How will it continue to evolve and adapt to meet the needs of individuals and societies in an ever-changing world? In this chapter, we will explore the future of yoga, looking at how it can remain relevant while staying grounded in its ancient wisdom, and how it might continue to shape our lives in the years to come. Yoga's ability to adapt to the modern world without losing its core principles has been a significant part of its journey. From its humble beginnings in ancient India, where it was practiced primarily by monks and spiritual seekers, to its widespread popularity in the 21st century, yoga has transcended cultural, geographical, and spiritual boundaries. As yoga has moved from its origins in the East to the West, it has encountered numerous influences and in turn has influenced global wellness trends. This blending of traditions has resulted in a diverse range of yoga practices, from the deeply spiritual and meditative to the highly physical and fitness-oriented. As we look to the future, the challenge will be to find ways to maintain the essence of yoga while embracing the changes and advancements that have shaped modern life. One of the most significant challenges facing yoga today is how to preserve its deep spiritual and philosophical roots, while also accommodating its more secular and fitness-oriented aspect. In recent decades, yoga has increasingly been seen as a way to build strength, flexibility, and cardiovascular health. This focus on physical fitness has made yoga more accessible to a wider range of people, especially those who may not have been drawn to its spiritual or philosophical dimensions. Yoga has become something that fits into a busy lifestyle, something you do for an hour a day to relieve stress and stay in shape. While this is undeniably beneficial, it raises questions about how we can ensure that yoga remains a path to self-awareness and inner peace, rather than just another form of exercise or another quick fix for stress. Looking to the future, it is clear that yoga will continue to be a tool for physical and mental health, but there is also a need to maintain its spiritual and philosophical foundations. The future of yoga may involve a deeper integration of the practices of mindfulness, meditation, and breathwork into the physical practice. Yoga is not just about achieving the perfect pose or building a certain type of body. It is about understanding oneself on a deeper level. As more people become aware of the mental and emotional benefits of yoga, we may see a shift back toward a more holistic approach, one that emphasizes the importance of inner peace, mental clarity, and spiritual growth alongside physical well-being. The modern world is constantly changing, and one of the biggest influences on yoga's future is the advancement of technology. With the rise of smartphones, tablets, and fitness apps, yoga has entered a new realm of accessibility. Online classes, virtual workshops, and yoga apps allow people to practice yoga from the comfort of their own homes, making it easier than ever to integrate yoga into daily life. This has opened up yoga to a global audience, allowing people from all corners of the world to experience its benefits, regardless of location or financial constraint. However, this rise in digital yoga also raises concerns about the potential for yoga to lose its personal touch. When yoga is practiced in front of a screen, it can be difficult to receive personalized instruction or to connect with others in a meaningful way. The sense of community that yoga has traditionally fostered may be lost in the digital space. As we move forward, it will be important to find ways to preserve the communal and personal aspects of yoga while embracing the conveniences of modern technology. One possibility for the future of yoga is the continued blending of yoga with other wellness practices and disciplines. Yoga is already being integrated into many forms of therapy, including physical therapy, trauma recovery, and mental health. Yoga's holistic approach, which emphasizes the mind-body connection, makes it a natural complement to other wellness practices. In the future, we may see even more crossover between yoga and other healing modalities. Yoga could be further integrated into mainstream healthcare systems, offering patients an alternative or complementary treatment for chronic conditions such as back pain, anxiety, and insomnia. Yoga's therapeutic potential, especially when combined with modern medical knowledge, could become an essential part of healthcare, not just as a fitness routine, but as a tool for overall well-being. Another area where yoga is likely to grow in the future is in its application for children and young people. In recent years, there has been a growing movement to introduce yoga into schools and youth. Yoga can offer children and adolescents an opportunity to develop physical strength, flexibility, and coordination, while also teaching them valuable life skills such as mindfulness, emotional regulation, and stress management. As young people face increasing pressures from school, social media, and the demands of modern life, yoga can serve as a valuable tool for building resilience and fostering mental and emotional well-being. Integrating yoga into schools could help instill a lifelong practice that supports healthy, balanced living, offering children a foundation of peace and mindfulness that they can carry with them into adulthood. As yoga continues to grow and evolve, it is also important to consider its environmental impact and sustainability. Yoga is often associated with a lifestyle that values holistic health, connection to nature, and mindfulness. As more and more people practice yoga, the demand for yoga mats, clothing, and accessories has risen, creating a market for eco-friendly and sustainable yoga products. The future of yoga may see even greater efforts to promote sustainability, not just in the materials used to make yoga gear, but also in the way yoga is taught and practiced. Many yoga practitioners are already aware of the need to care for the planet, and the future of yoga may include more emphasis on environmental consciousness, both within yoga studios and in the broader yoga community. One of the most exciting possibilities for the future of yoga is its continued ability to adapt and respond to the needs of individuals and communities around the world. Yoga has already transcended its origins in ancient India to become a global practice, and its future will likely see even more cross-cultural exchanges and adaptations. Different cultures and communities are already incorporating their own traditions and teachings into yoga, creating a rich and diverse global yoga community. Whether it's the integration of mindfulness practices from Buddhism, the focus on community and connection in African traditions, or the exploration of nature and spirituality in indigenous practices, yoga will continue to evolve in ways that reflect the diversity and complexity of the world we live in. As we look ahead to the future, it's clear that yoga's journey is far from over. It has adapted and transformed throughout history, and it will continue to do so in response to the needs and challenges of the modern world. However, as yoga continues to evolve, it is crucial that we honor and respect the ancient wisdom that has been passed down through generations. By staying connected to yoga's roots while embracing the innovations and opportunities of the future, we can ensure that yoga remains a practice that promotes not just physical health, but also mental, emotional, and spiritual well-being. The future of yoga is a bright one that is grounded in its ancient teachings and yet open to the possibilities of the modern world. As long as yoga remains a path to self-awareness,
peace, and connection, its relevance will only continue to grow. Whether practiced by individuals seeking balance in their own lives or used in community settings to promote wellness, yoga will continue to be a powerful tool for transformation in the years to come.
Yoga as a way of life. Living yoga in the modern world. Yoga is not just a physical practice, it is a way of life. For centuries, people have turned to yoga to find balance, peace, and connection in their lives. It is a tool that can help individuals navigate the ups and downs of life, offering a space to turn inward, cultivate mindfulness, and discover a sense of inner calm amidst the chaos of the modern world. But as yoga has become increasingly popular in the West, the question arises, how can we take yoga beyond the studio and incorporate its teachings into our everyday lives? How can we make yoga not just something we do on the mat, but something we live and breathe in everything we do? To live yoga is to embody its principles in all aspects of life, whether it is through the way we move, the way we think, or the way we interact with others. Yoga invites us to be present in every moment, to listen to our bodies, to cultivate compassion, and to approach life with a sense of balance and equanimity. The ancient yogic texts teach us that yoga is not just a set of physical postures, but a way of living in harmony with ourselves, with others, and with the world around us. In the modern world, where many people feel disconnected, overwhelmed, and stressed, yoga offers a roadmap for how to live more consciously and with greater purpose. Living yoga begins with the practice itself, but it doesn't end when we roll up our mats and step out of the studio. The physical postures, or asanas, are just one part of the larger picture of yoga. To live yoga, we must embrace the deeper practices of self-awareness, mindfulness, and self-compassion that form the foundation of yoga. These practices can be integrated into our daily lives in simple yet powerful ways, from the way we approach our relationships to the way we care for our bodies and minds. One of the core principles of yoga is the concept of mindfulness, being fully present in the moment, without judgment or distraction. In our busy modern lives, it can be easy to fall into the trap of multitasking, constantly thinking about the future or the past, and rushing from one task to the next. Yet yoga teaches us that the present moment is all we truly have. When we are mindful, we bring our full attention to what we are doing, whether it is sitting in a meeting, having a conversation, or simply walking down the street. Living yoga means bringing that sense of presence to every moment, recognizing that life unfolds in the here and now. This mindfulness can help us to slow down, reduce stress, and find greater joy in the simple acts of daily living. Another key aspect of living yoga is cultivating a sense of compassion towards ourselves and others. In yoga, we are taught to practice ahimsa or non-violence, which extends not only to our actions but also to our thoughts and words. This means being kind and gentle with ourselves, especially when we make mistakes or face challenges. In our modern world, it's easy to fall into the trap of self-criticism, constantly comparing ourselves to others, or striving for perfection. But yoga teaches us that true growth comes from embracing who we are, flaws and all. By practicing compassion towards ourselves, we also cultivate compassion towards others, recognizing that everyone is on their own unique journey. In a world that often feels divided, yoga invites us to connect with others in a spirit of love, understanding, and mutual respect. Living yoga also means approaching our physical bodies with care and respect. Yoga encourages us to listen to our bodies, to honor their limitations, and to cultivate strength and flexibility through mindful movement. In the modern world, where many of us spend hours sitting at desks, staring at screens, and living sedentary lifestyles, yoga offers a counterbalance. It helps us to reconnect with our bodies, to stretch, strengthen, and relax in ways that promote long-term health and well-being. But beyond the physical postures, yoga teaches us to view our bodies with love and appreciation, rather than judgment or criticism. By cultivating a mindful relationship with our bodies, we can learn to care for ourselves in ways that support both our physical and mental health. Yoga also has the power to help us navigate the challenges of modern life with greater resilience and grace. In a world that is filled with stress, uncertainty, and rapid change, it is easy to feel overwhelmed and disconnected. Yet yoga provides tools to help us stay grounded in the midst of chaos. Through the practice of pranayama, breathing techniques, and meditation, we can calm our minds, reduce stress, and find clarity amidst the noise. By incorporating these practices into our daily lives, we can cultivate a sense of inner peace that helps us navigate life's ups and downs with greater ease. Yoga teaches us to approach challenges not as obstacles, but as opportunities for growth and transformation. By embracing the principles of yoga, we can face difficulties with a calm mind and an open heart, knowing that we have the strength to overcome whatever comes our way. Another important aspect of living yoga is cultivating a sense of gratitude. In our busy, goal-oriented culture, it is easy to get caught up in the desire for more success, more possessions, more achievement. Yet yoga teaches us to appreciate what we already have, to recognize the abundance that exists in our lives, and to be grateful for the present moment. Living yoga means taking time each day to reflect on the things we are thankful for, whether it is the love of family and friends, the beauty of nature, or simply the gift of being alive. Gratitude has the power to shift our perspective, helping us to focus on the positive rather than dwelling on the negative. It reminds us that true happiness does not come from external circumstances but from within. In addition to these personal practices, living yoga also means engaging with the world in a way that promotes the well-being of others and the planet. Yoga teaches us that we are all interconnected and that our actions have an impact on the world around us. In the future, we may see more people using yoga as a way to contribute to social and environmental causes, working to create a world that is more compassionate, sustainable, and just. Whether it's through teaching yoga to underserved communities, advocating for environmental sustainability, or supporting social justice initiatives, yoga offers a powerful framework for living in alignment with our values. By living yoga in a way that benefits not just ourselves, but also the world around us, we can help to create a more harmonious and peaceful world. Living yoga also means embracing the idea that yoga is not just a practice, but a lifelong journey. As we grow and change, our practice will evolve with us. Yoga is not about achieving perfection or reaching a particular destination, but about continually learning, growing, and deepening our understanding of ourselves and the world. The journey of yoga is one that lasts a lifetime, and each step along the way offers opportunities for self-discovery and transformation. In the modern world, where many people feel disconnected from themselves, others, and the world around them, yoga offers a path back to wholeness. It is a practice that invites us to slow down, breathe, and reconnect with the present moment. It teaches us to cultivate compassion, mindfulness, and gratitude, and to live in harmony with our bodies, minds, and spirits. As we continue to face the challenges of the modern world, yoga will remain a powerful tool for promoting health, well-being, and peace. By living yoga in our everyday lives, we can create a world that is not only healthier, but also more compassionate, more mindful, and more connected. Yoga at its core is about living in alignment with our highest truth, with love and compassion for ourselves and the world. As we look toward the future, it is clear that yoga will continue to evolve and adapt, but its timeless teachings will remain a guiding light for those seeking peace, purpose, and connection in an ever-changing world. By living yoga in our everyday lives, we can create a better, more harmonious world for ourselves and for future generations.